The winter flu season starts to take its toll with infected young patient in intensive care unit. 100 pigs to be culled over African swine fever virus concerns. Vice Premier He Lifeng meets visiting British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Hong Kong has entered the winter flu season and saw the first severe influenza case involving a 4-year-old boy. Noting that the boy's kindergarten is not taking part in any outreach flu vaccination program, Secretary for Health Lo Chung-mau has called on efforts to step up community protection against the virus. The 4-year-old boy infected with influenza A has been hospitalized in the intensive care unit of Queen Mary Hospital. He remains in serious condition with invasive pneumococcal bacteria. According to the Center for Health Protection, the boy has not traveled abroad during the incubation period. Last week, he started developing a high fever, cough, and abdominal pain. On January 5th, the boy sought medical treatment at a private hospital before seeing a private doctor again 2 days later. He was admitted to Canossa Hospital. The boy was transferred to Queen Mary Hospital the next day. CHP said the boy has not received a flu jab and his kindergarten did not take part in the on-site influenza vaccination program. The government had released a list of schools that refused to participate in the scheme. While some lawmakers questioned if the list would stigmatize the schools, Secretary for Health Lo Chung-mau said that the Department of Health had repeatedly contacted these schools and urged them to join the vaccination scheme, and the move is part of the community's guardrails against the virus.
We have the responsibility to inform the public and especially the parents. So I do feel that it's not a matter of affecting the reputation of a certain school. We all have the same mission, and that is to protect our kids, especially in this winter flu season.
Lo said it's not the first time the list of schools was made public, and the objective is to remind parents to bring their children to receive flu shots on their own. The government has ordered the culling of all pigs in a farm in Yuen Long after samples collected tested positive for the African swine fever virus. Timothy Lee reports.
The pig farm in Wong Nai Tun affected by the virus has already been closed. Some canisters of carbon dioxide believed to be used for culling the animals could be seen on the premises. A notification was displayed on one of the farm's doors saying the government early collected samples from 11 pigs on the farm on Friday. At least 3 of them tested positive for the African swine fever virus. The notification added authorities will perform checks on 3 other pig farms within 3 kilometers, with the facilities halting the movement of pigs until further notice. This as the government reminded the public that the virus does not spread to humans and that it is safe to consume pork that's properly cooked. But what do residents think of the situation? This man said he will only buy pork that displays certifications provided by the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department. While this woman said she's worried about the virus and that she's buying less pork for making soup. The culling of pigs at the Yuen Long farm is not expected to pose any major challenge to the overall supply of live pigs. Lawmaker Stephen Ho from the Agriculture and Fisheries constituency said the daily supply of live pigs in Hong Kong is around 4,000, so the loss of 100 or so pigs is not an issue. However, the lawmaker did not exclude the possibility of the African swine fever virus being linked to the city's wild pigs. A wild pig caught in Tai Po last November tested positive for the virus. Ho urged the government to strengthen efforts to chase away wild animals venturing near pig farms and build fences and walls around the farms. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A man in his 60s died after losing control of his motorcycle before crashing it into a barrier in Tsuen Wan. The vehicle carried a probationary driving license. The accident happened at around 12:30 p.m. The motorcyclist was suspected of slamming into a barrier on Chu Mun Road while traveling from Shamjiang to Tsuen Wan. His helmet could be seen lying on the side of the road. The motorist, who is in his 60s, was unconscious when sent to Yan Chai Hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. The cold weather warning is in effect. The observatory once again issued a frost warning this afternoon, noting that there could be frost formations in northern New Territories and elevated areas tomorrow morning. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Breezy winds on Taimoshan as the mountain recorded a temperature of just 3.8 degrees this morning. The observatory recorded an even lower temperature of 2.3 degrees in the area, making it the coldest in all of Hong Kong. Despite the frosty weather, some people visited Taimoshan before dawn, hoping to catch a glimpse of ice formations. This man, wearing 4 tops and 3 pairs of pants, said he's still afraid of the cold. While this man said he rarely wakes up this early, but decided to visit the mountain after the observatory announced the possibility of frost. But visitors' hopes were dashed when trees and bushes remained ice-free as dawn broke. Meanwhile, the observatory recorded a minimum temperature of 11.5 degrees in urban areas, the coldest since the start of winter. Most areas experienced temperatures of 11 degrees or lower. The observatory forecasted temperatures along the Guangdong coastline will gradually rise at the start of next week, owing to the influence of an easterly airstream. But temperatures could then drop to 14 degrees under the influence of a northeast monsoon. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Britain's Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, has kicked off her 2-day China trip. Her first stop is Beijing, where she jointly chaired the 11th China-UK Economic and Financial Dialogue with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. The resumption of dialogue after 6 years is expected to add impetus to intergovernmental cooperation in economic and green development. Danny Zhou reports.
Reeves and a delegation of senior British business leaders are in Beijing on Saturday to improve economic ties at a time when the British government is facing the challenge of soaring borrowing costs. During a visit to a Brompton bike store in Beijing, Reeves stressed growth is the #1 mission of this Labour government and said she seeks a pragmatic and good relationship with Beijing, which is in UK's national interest.
And that's why I'm in China with some of the leaders of financial services firms in the UK, and also meeting businesses right across the economy who already operate in China to help them to grow their business and help other businesses looking to expand their markets too.
China is Britain's 4th largest trading partner. While in Beijing, Reeves is expected to visit some British brands operating in China, including Jaguar Land Rover and Diageo. Later in the morning, Reeves met with Vice President Han Zheng at the Great Hall of the People. Han said restarting the UK-China dialogue mechanism helps to further enhance economic and trade cooperation between the two countries. Reeves said Britain attaches great importance to developing ties with China. She also noted an open and frank dialogue is needed in areas where they agree, but also in areas where they have different views. A focus of Reeves' trip is the bilateral economic talks with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng, who is responsible for economic issues. Their discussions touched upon a series of topics, including macroeconomic policies, economic globalization, trade and investment, and industrial cooperation. Acknowledging the two countries' differences in cultures and values, He said there's broad space for cooperation. In his call for protecting economic globalization, He contended China is willing to join hands with the UK to create a fair, just and non-discriminatory business environment and provide good conditions for the other side's companies. Reeves brought about the complex and challenging geopolitical landscape, citing Russia's war in Ukraine. She said London and Beijing have a shared responsibility to address global challenges. She added that she aims to find common ground in cooperation without weakening Britain's national security. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
And still ahead, Donald Trump is sentenced to no punishment in hush money case conviction. Wildfires in Southern California still raging out of control. Hong Kong's DSE exam earns recognition from other countries. Welcome back. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump was sentenced to no punishment in his historic hush money case, a judgment that lets him return to the White House without the threat of a jail term or a fine. It was the first criminal prosecution and first conviction of a former U.S. president. Nasvi Karim with more.
It's a case that breaks all norms, one that Americans have never seen before and unlikely to see again. A former president convicted of a felony sentenced to no punishment just days ahead of his inauguration for a second term. Judge Juan Merchan in New York trying to find a balance between the integrity of a conviction and accepting future legal protections as president.
This court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office. Thank you.
For Trump, who attended via video link, the trial is a sham, maintaining that the money used to reimburse the lawyer who paid Stormy Daniels was legitimate business expenses.
This has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. And this has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before.
Trump was convicted by a jury on each of the 34 counts he was charged with. None of it, though, hurt him with voters who chose him ahead of Kamala Harris in November's election. Outside the courtroom, pro- and anti-Trump demonstrators made their voices heard. Trump has 3 other criminal indictments, but they have either ended or stalled ahead of trial. Despite an unconditional discharge, the 78-year-old still wants the criminal record expunged, and his lawyers say they will appeal the conviction. But when he returns to the White House on January 20th, Donald Trump will become the first U.S. president to take office with a felony conviction on his record. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Calmer winds enable firefighters to get some control of the worst wildfires in Los Angeles history. New evacuation orders have been added to tens of thousands already in place, with 5 major blazes still burning. David Garrett reports.
It looks like a volcano unleashing hell. These are more wildfires erupting in Los Angeles. Weaker winds means conditions for firefighters have improved slightly. Air assets continue to attack the blazes from above, helicopters and other aircraft dousing the flames with gallons upon gallons of water. Officials say less than 10% of the fires are contained. An area larger than San Francisco has been affected. Questions being raised about government response and readiness. California's governor wants an investigation into water shortages. The mayor cut $17 million from the fire department's budget. As the tragedy heads into a 5th day, more homeowners who fled deadly flames returning to find if they still have a house. With the fires more widespread than even the worst predictions, this family never thought it would happen to them. A nighttime curfew is in place to stop looting in the worst-hit areas. LAPD and the National Guard are on the streets. This natural disaster, described as the worst in LA history, has hit rich and poor. These multi-million-dollar beachfront properties scorched to the ground.
It looks like a war zone. I've never seen anything like it. You can go blocks where there's no homes, and then you go a block where you'll see a little bit of smoldering on a tree. I was absolutely shocked is not even the word for the destruction that it caused in that area.
5 major fires are still burning. This man points to where he says he saw the Palisades fire start at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Luckily, it went in the other direction, away from his backyard. He says he saw firefighters tackling the blaze among thick shrubs, but with no chance of containment.
I heard that could have been started by a hiker or a homeless person or people lighting fireworks. Could have been the same thing with this fire. There was no lightning, there's no power lines up there, there's no reason necessarily that a fire would just start by itself, but who knows.
Not clear how it started, and with winds likely to pick up over the coming days, especially on Monday, it's not apparent when it will end. David Garrett, TVB News.
Thousands staged rallies in Seoul in a show of support for impeached South Korean leader Yoon Suk-yeol. They sat and sang in front of presidential residence where the embattled president remains holed up. His security service have prevented him being arrested, though his security chief has now resigned. These protesters condemn the anti-corruption agency for trying to detain Yoon. Yoon's presidential powers were suspended when the opposition-dominated assembly voted to impeach him after a short-lived declaration of martial law. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was sworn in for a third 6-year term on Friday, despite international condemnation of his recent re-election as illegitimate. Nasri Karim with more.
Nicolas Maduro takes the oath of office during his inauguration for a third term as president of Venezuela. Some countries, such as the United States, may question his legitimacy, but many nations back the leader. Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega, a special envoy from Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel were among those in Caracas to congratulate Maduro. Maduro said representatives from 125 countries attended the ceremony. An officer of the Venezuelan army also pledged loyalty to Maduro, whose victory in last year's election is being questioned by opposition leaders and some Western countries. People in cities across the country came out to celebrate Maduro's inauguration. They watched the ceremony on giant screens, waved flags, while the police kept watch over proceedings. This Maduro supporter said she felt like crying with happiness, hoping the country can move forward. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado released a video on social media to her 8.7 million followers in which she called Maduro's inauguration a coup. She also called on former presidential candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, who she and others feel is the rightful president, against traveling to Venezuela until the moment was right. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Venezuelan officials and urged Maduro to restore democracy.
Maduro has once again demonstrated a complete disregard for democratic norms and is proceeding with an illegitimate inauguration today. We've given Maduro and his representatives every opportunity to restore democracy, but they've chosen not to.
Nazri Karim, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Examinations and Assessment Authority, or HKEAA, held its annual open day today. For the first time, foreign consulates were invited to set up information booths. Some share with TVB News on why Hong Kong's public exam results have been well recognized in their countries. The annual open day of the Hong Kong Examinations and Assessment Authority was held at its exam center in Hung Hom on Saturday. Students and parents could try marking exam papers of the HKDSE, or Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education examination. Some parents noted the versatility of DSE to test students' academic ability, as exam papers come in English, traditional, and simplified Chinese.
It's a fair game to play, especially the students from mainland China. They like Chinese is their mother tongue, right? If they're learning like SAT, A-level, or AP course, they have to learn English well first, and then the subject second. But if you study DSE, then it's like you can use your mother tongue to study all the subjects.
For the first time, consulates and education institutions from 5 countries were invited to share information about how DSE results could be used to apply for further studies at their countries.
They have a lot of these little booklets, so I can learn more about their countries and what I can learn from their school.
A lot of Hong Kong students, they tend to go to English-speaking countries, so they don't really know about France. So that's a great opportunity to start with.
HKDSE can be used to apply for renowned programs in Europe as well.
Students who take the HKDSE, and it's not only like the culture and gastronomy, etc., but it's also like excellence, like great programs and a lot of like scholarships as well.
Right now, around 90 universities in Spain recognize DSE, so the students can apply to these universities and they can enter the university without taking any further exam in Spain.
There are 5 Category C language subjects, including French, Spanish, German, Japanese, and Korean. Starting this year, candidates' results that meet the proficiency level under stipulated language examinations will be included in the Hong Kong DSE examination. Commenting on earlier cases of students who use forged DSE certificates to apply for a Macau university, Secretary General of HKEAA Wei Xiangdong said they have reached out to more than 1,000 overseas education institutions to promote their DSE result verification systems.
Some of the students are, somehow being, missed by some, institutions. Some of the agencies. But in fact, there's many ways to check the authenticity results. The universities, institutions start to aware those services. They will all use it, and there will be no way to, try to get through that.
And that's the news. Stay warm. Happy Saturday. And that's the news.